My husband stood in our living room, holding his mistress's ultrasound photo like it was a winning lottery ticket, telling me she was carrying his son. He wanted a divorce, wanted to start fresh with his real family. What he didn't know was that the envelope I handed him 30 seconds later would prove he'd been played worse than I ever was, and that the son he was celebrating didn't exist. 2 weeks earlier, I'd been living in blissful ignorance. Not happy ignorance. I'd known for months that something was wrong between Daniel and me, but ignorance nonetheless. We'd been married for 6 years, together for 8, and somewhere around year 4, the warmth had started to drain out of our relationship like water from a cracked vessel. Slowly at first, so slowly I barely noticed, until one day I looked up and realized I was living with a stranger who happened to share my last name and my mortgage. Daniel worked in finance. Long hours, he always said. Client dinners, weekend conferences. I worked from home as a medical transcriptionist, which meant I spent my days typing up doctor's notes in our spare bedroom, while Daniel's absence grew into something I could almost touch, something solid and cold that filled the spaces where he used to be. We'd been trying for a baby, or rather, I'd been trying, and Daniel had been going through the motions with decreasing enthusiasm. 3 years of negative pregnancy tests, of watching that single line appear month after month while my hope curdled into something bitter and desperate. The fertility specialist had said there was nothing wrong with either of us. Sometimes it just takes time, she'd said with practiced sympathy. Try to relax. Relax, as if anxiety was the only thing standing between me and motherhood. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October when my world cracked open. I'd been working on a particularly difficult file, a neurologist with an accent so thick I had to replay each sentence 3 times to catch every word, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You deserve to know the truth. Starbucks on Morrison Street, 4 p.m. today. I'll be wearing a red scarf. My first instinct was to delete it. Obvious scam, right? Some elaborate phishing scheme. But something made me hesitate. The specificity of it. The Starbucks on Morrison Street was 3 blocks from Daniel's office. And there was something about the tone. Not threatening, not dramatic, just tired. I went. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because transcribing medical reports for 8 hours a day makes you hungry for anything that feels real, even if it's real in a bad way. Maybe because some part of me already knew, had known for months, and was tired of pretending. She was sitting at a corner table when I arrived, her red scarf vivid against her black coat. Mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, expensive-looking handbag on the chair beside her. Pretty in a calculated way. Perfect makeup, manicured nails, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never had a bad photo taken in her life. "Melissa," she said as I approached. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Yes?" I sat down across from her, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Who are you?" "My name is Jennifer Hayes." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to warm herself, even though the cafe was overheated. "I've been seeing your husband for 18 months. The words landed like physical blows. 18 months. A year and a half. While I'd been scheduling fertility appointments and buying ovulation predictor kits and crying in our bathroom every time my period started, he'd been with her. "I didn't know he was married," Jennifer continued quickly, her words tumbling over each other. "Not at first. He told me he was divorced, that it had been finalized 2 years ago, that he lived alone. I believed him. God, I'm so stupid. I believed every word. Why are you telling me this?" My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else's mouth. "Because I'm pregnant." She said it flatly, watching my face. 3 months. And when I showed him the ultrasound and told him we were having a son, he finally admitted he was still married. He said he was going to leave you, that he wanted to be with me and the baby, that he'd been planning to end things with you anyway. The cafe had gone fuzzy around the edges. I gripped the edge of the table, focusing on the cool smoothness of the wood grain under my fingers. Breathe. Just breathe. He said, Jennifer's voice cracked, he said you couldn't give him children, that you'd been trying for years and that he'd wasted enough time hoping you'd get pregnant. He said I was giving him what you never could. The cruelty of it stole my breath. Not just the affair, not just the lies, but the way he'd weaponized our infertility, our shared grief, and turned it into a justification for betrayal. "Why are you telling me?" I asked again. "Why not just take him? Clearly that's what you both want." Jennifer's laugh was bitter. "Because I found out last week that I'm not the only one. There's at least one other woman, maybe more, and because when I confronted him about it, when I asked him to at least be faithful to me since he was leaving you for me, do you know what he said?" I shook my head. He said, "Why would I limit my options? Like I was a stock portfolio he was diversifying, like our baby was just another asset he was acquiring." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I thought about not telling you. Thought about just disappearing, raising this baby alone, letting you keep your marriage to a man who doesn't deserve either of us. But then I realized, you deserve to know. You deserve to make your own choice with all the information." She slid a manila envelope across the table. "Hotel receipts, restaurant charges on a credit card I didn't know he had, text messages I managed to screenshot from his phone, photos, dates, times, places, everything I could gather. I'm not proud of what I did with him, but I'm not going to let him make me the villain in his story while he walks away clean." I took the envelope with numb fingers. It was thick, heavy with evidence of my husband's double life. "I'm sorry," Jennifer whispered. "I'm so sorry. If I'd known—" "But you did know." I looked at her directly for the first time. "Maybe not at first, but at some point you knew, and you stayed anyway." She flinched, but didn't deny it. "You're right, I did. I wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored every red flag, every inconsistency. I wanted the fantasy he was selling." She stood, gathering her things. "For what it's worth, I'm ending it, completely. He doesn't know I'm meeting you, and he never will. I'm moving back to California next month where my family is. He can pay child support or not. I don't care anymore. I just want him out of my life." She paused at my chair, one hand briefly touching my shoulder. "Good luck, Melissa. I hope you take him for everything he's got." Then she was gone, disappearing into the gray October afternoon, leaving me alone with an envelope full of evidence and a future I could no longer recognize. I sat in that Starbucks for over an hour, the coffee I'd ordered growing cold in front of me, the envelope unopened on the table. People came and went around me. A mother with twin toddlers who shrieked and laughed and spilled crackers everywhere. A teenage couple holding hands, their faces soft with new love. An elderly man reading a newspaper, methodically working through a crossword puzzle. Normal life. The kind of life I'd thought I was living until 30 minutes ago. Finally, as the autumn sun began to sink toward the horizon and the cafe lights grew brighter, I opened the envelope. Jennifer had been thorough, obsessively so. Credit card statements going back over a year, charges highlighted in yellow, hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, a weekend trip to wine country that Daniel had told me was a work conference. Printed text messages, the thread going back months, screenshots of emails, photos taken at restaurants, at beaches, in what looked like the lobby of an expensive hotel, Daniel's arm around Jennifer, his smile easy and genuine, in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. And there, near the bottom of the stack, ultrasound photos. 2 of them. The first was grainy, standard, the kind every expectant mother gets. But it was the second one that made my heart stop. It had a name printed at the top. Not Jennifer Hayes. Rebecca Kowalski. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and did what I should have done immediately. I Googled Jennifer Hayes. Her LinkedIn came up first. Management consultant. Before that, previous jobs in marketing, in business development. And there, buried 6 entries down in the search results, an article from a business magazine about rising stars in competitive industries. The article included tips on negotiation tactics and competitive intelligence. Jennifer Hayes, it turned out, was very, very good at research, at finding leverage, at winning. I called the number on the ultrasound, the medical practice where it had been taken. A pleasant receptionist answered. "Hi, I'm calling to confirm an appointment for Rebecca Kowalski," I said, making my voice bright and harried. "I'm her sister. She asked me to check on the date, but I've lost the paperwork." "Let me look." A pause, the sound of typing. "I'm sorry, I don't have a Rebecca Kowalski in our system. Are you sure you have the right office?" Oh, maybe she goes by her married name, Rebecca Hayes? More typing. No, sorry, no Rebecca Hayes either. Is it possible she's seeing a different practice? I thanked her and hung up. Then I looked at the ultrasound image more carefully. The date stamp looked wrong. Not wrong enough to be obvious, but the font was slightly different from the standard medical imaging font. The quality of the image was too sharp, too clean. It was fake, or at least it wasn't Jennifer's. Maybe she'd bought it online. Maybe she'd photoshopped it. Maybe she'd stolen it from someone else's file. But it wasn't real. I sat back, my mind racing. Why would Jennifer give me fake ultrasound photos? Why include that obvious mistake with the wrong name? Unless she wanted me to find it, wanted me to question everything, wanted me to be angry at Daniel, not just for cheating, but for being stupid enough to fall for an obvious scam. I went through the rest of the envelope with new eyes. The hotel receipts were real. I verified the charges against our credit card statements that I pulled up on our joint banking app. The restaurant charges were real. The text messages, the emails, those seemed real too, full of the kind of specific details that would be hard to fabricate. The photos were definitely Daniel, definitely Jennifer, definitely showing them together in romantic settings. But the ultrasound was fake, which meant either Jennifer had lied about being pregnant or she was pregnant but wasn't sure the baby was Daniel's and was hedging her bets. Or she'd miscarried and was using fake photos to keep Daniel on the hook. Or she'd never been pregnant at all and was running some kind of long con. Any way I looked at it, Daniel was an idiot, and I was married to him. I drove home in the dark, the envelope on the passenger seat next to me, my thoughts spinning in useless circles. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, to throw the evidence in his face and watch him scramble for explanations. But another part, the part of me that had spent 3 years scheduling sex according to my ovulation calendar, that had endured invasive tests and uncomfortable procedures, that had organized my entire life around the hope of having a baby with this man, that part needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with before I acted. Daniel wasn't home when I arrived. Working late, presumably, or with Jennifer, or with whoever else he was seeing. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at our kitchen table, the envelope spread out in front of me, and I planned. By the time he walked through the door at almost midnight, I knew exactly what I was going to do. "Hey," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled. "Sorry I'm late. The Brennan deal is killing me." "It's fine," I said softly, playing my role, the understanding wife. "I saved you some dinner." His smile was distracted. "Thanks, babe. I'm actually not hungry. Long client dinner." The lie slid out so easily. He'd had years of practice, I supposed. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I hired a private investigator, not to confirm what Jennifer had told me, but to find out everything she hadn't. I consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys, getting free initial consultations, learning about asset protection and alimony, and how to prove adultery in a no-fault divorce state. I opened a separate bank account and began quietly moving money into it. Nothing obvious, just my own earnings from my transcription work, plus cash back from grocery shopping, small amounts Daniel wouldn't notice. And I watched him, really watched him, maybe for the first time in years. Noticed how his phone was always face down now, how he showered immediately when he got home, how he'd started going to the gym 4 times a week when he'd never exercised regularly before, how he'd developed opinions about wine when he'd always been a beer drinker. All the classic signs. How had I missed them? The private investigator I'd hired, a middle-aged woman named Rosa with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, called me on a Tuesday morning with her preliminary report. "Your husband is seeing at least 2 women regularly," she said, without preamble. "Jennifer Hayes, who works at Morrison & Associates downtown, and a woman named Amanda Chen, who's a pharmaceutical sales rep. There may be others, but those are the 2 I can confirm with photographic evidence." "Is Jennifer pregnant?" I asked. A pause. "She's telling your husband she is. Whether that's true or not, I can't verify without medical records. But she's not showing, and I've observed her drinking wine at dinner with him twice last week." "Can you get me more information about her? Background, employment history, anything unusual?" "Already on it. I'll have a full report by end of week." When the report came, it was illuminating. Jennifer Hayes had been married before. Twice, actually. Both marriages had ended in contentious divorces where she'd gotten substantial settlements. She had no children, despite claiming to want them in her social media posts. And she had a pattern. Date wealthy men, get pregnant or claim to be pregnant, secure commitment, then somehow the pregnancy would disappear, but the relationship and financial entanglement would remain. She was running a con, a sophisticated one, polished by years of practice, but a con nonetheless. And Daniel had fallen for it completely. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. My husband hadn't just cheated on me. He'd cheated on me with a professional grifter and was too arrogant and stupid to realize he was being played. The confrontation happened on a Saturday afternoon in November. Daniel came home from what he'd said was a golf game, but Rosa had sent me photos of him brunching with Jennifer. He walked into our living room, saw me sitting on the couch, and his face changed. He'd always been easy to read, my husband. Every emotion played across his features like text on a screen. "We need to talk," he said. And there was something in his voice, not guilt, but excitement, anticipation. "Okay," I said calmly. He sat across from me, not next to me. That said everything. "Melissa, I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. I think we both know this marriage isn't working." Standard opening. I'd read enough divorce forums over the past 2 weeks to recognize the script. "I've met someone," he continued. "Someone who makes me feel alive again. And she's pregnant. With my son." There it was, the pride in his voice when he said son, like he'd accomplished something miraculous instead of just failing to use a condom. He pulled out his phone, pulled up a photo, turned it toward me, an ultrasound image. The same fake one Jennifer had included in my envelope, I realized. "I'm going to be a father," he said. His eyes were shining. "I'm finally going to have the family I always wanted." The implication was clear, the family I couldn't give him. I reached into the folder I'd prepared, pulled out an envelope, smaller than the one Jennifer had given me, but just as damaging, and slid it across the coffee table. "You should open that," I said quietly. His brow furrowed. "What is this?" "Open it." He did, pulling out the papers inside. I watched his face as he read through them, watched confusion morph into disbelief, then into something that looked like physical pain. The first document was a background report on Jennifer Hayes, complete with her marital history, her pattern of fake pregnancies, and a note from a private investigator she'd hired during her second divorce, which I'd obtained through some creative networking, where she'd explicitly discussed using pregnancy as leverage. The second was a forensic analysis of the ultrasound photo, showing that the metadata was inconsistent with medical imaging software and that the image had been edited in Photoshop. The third was a sworn statement from Rebecca Kowalski, the woman whose name had appeared on one of the ultrasounds, confirming that Jennifer Hayes had stolen her medical records during a previous job where they'd worked together. And the fourth was a printout of text messages between Jennifer and someone named Marcus, discussing the Daniel Project and debating whether he's worth the effort or if we should cut losses and move on. Daniel's face had gone gray. "This can't be real. You fabricated this." "Call her," I said. "Right now. Call Jennifer and ask her to meet you at her OBGYN for the next appointment. Tell her you want to be there, to see the baby, to hear the heartbeat. See what she says." His hands were shaking as he picked up his phone. I watched him dial, watched him put the phone to his ear. From across the room, I could hear it ring once, twice, 3 times, then go to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He tried a third time. This time, the call didn't even ring, just went straight to that automated message that means someone has blocked your number. The phone slipped from his hand onto the couch cushion. He stared at it like it was a foreign object. "She's been running a con," I said, my voice still unnaturally calm. "She picked you because you're financially comfortable, emotionally vulnerable, and apparently not very bright. The pregnancy was never real. The son you're so excited about doesn't exist. She was going to string you along until you'd left me, married her, maybe given her access to bank accounts or credit cards. And then she would have had a convenient miscarriage, and you'd have been stuck in marriage number 2 with a woman who's done this at least twice before. No, he shook his head violently. No, you're lying. You're just trying to keep me from leaving. I don't want to keep you, I interrupted. Daniel, I haven't wanted to keep you for over a year, but I'll be damned if I let you blow up our life for a fantasy sold to you by a con artist. I pulled out another envelope. This is a divorce petition. I've already filed it. You're being served on Monday. The house is in my name because my grandmother left me the down payment. You might remember that. I have documentation of your affairs with Jennifer and with Amanda Chen, plus evidence of you using marital funds for hotels and gifts for your mistresses. In this state, adultery affects property division and alimony. His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. You're going to sign an agreement giving me the house, half your retirement accounts, and alimony for 5 years. In exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges against you for forging my signature on our last tax return. Yes, I found that too. And I won't send all of this information about your affairs to your boss, who I believe has a strict morality clause in your employment contract. You can't, he finally managed. I already have. I stood up. Your brother is on his way over to help you pack some things. You're going to stay somewhere else while we work out the details of the divorce. If you try to access our joint accounts beyond your normal spending, I'll know immediately, and I will make this as public and painful as possible. If you try to hide assets, I will find them. I have a forensic accountant going through everything. I walked to the front door and opened it. Oh, and Daniel, the cruelest irony? I'm pregnant. His head snapped up, his eyes wide. Found out 3 days ago, 11 weeks along, due in June. I smiled, and it was not a kind smile. The universe has a hell of a sense of humor, doesn't it? You spent 3 years complaining that I couldn't give you a baby, threw away our marriage because your fake pregnant mistress promised you a son, and meanwhile, I was actually carrying your child the whole time you were cheating on me. The color had drained completely from his face. Melissa, you're not going to be part of this child's life, I continued. You'll pay child support as required by law, but that's it. No custody, no visitation, unless I decide to allow it. I have months of documentation showing you're an unfit parent. The affairs, the lying, the financial manipulation. No judge is going to give you meaningful access to a child when their mother can prove you're morally bankrupt. That's my child, he said hoarsely. No. This is my child. You forfeited your right to fatherhood when you told your mistress I was defective, when you celebrated that fake ultrasound like it was the answer to your prayers, while your actual child was growing inside the wife you couldn't be bothered to stay faithful to. His brother's truck pulled up outside. I'd called him earlier, explained the situation in the broadest possible terms. Good man, Daniel's brother. He'd always liked me better than he liked Daniel. Goodbye, Daniel, I said softly. I really hope Jennifer was worth it. He left. Didn't even take much. Some clothes, his laptop, his golf clubs. Moved like a man in a dream. Or a nightmare. His brother gave me a long hug before following him out. He's an idiot, his brother said simply. Always has been. You deserve better, Melissa. I know, I said, and I meant it. The divorce took 4 months to finalize. Daniel tried to fight it initially, hired an expensive lawyer who postured and threatened. But the evidence was overwhelming, and eventually his attorney told him bluntly that he was going to lose badly if we went to trial. He signed the settlement agreement I'd drafted. I got the house. I got half his retirement accounts and his stock options. I got alimony for 5 years and child support calculated at the maximum percentage of his income. He got to walk away with his reputation barely intact and a hard lesson in checking the credentials of the women you cheat with. Jennifer Hayes, according to Rosa's final report, moved to Seattle and was last seen dating a tech executive. The cycle continuing. My daughter was born on a sunny day in June, 7 pounds, 8 ounces. Perfect. I named her Emma after my grandmother and Catherine after my mother. Emma Catherine Preston. I'd taken back my maiden name the day the divorce was final. Daniel asked to see her once, about a month after she was born. I allowed it, supervised, at my lawyer's office. He held her for maybe 5 minutes, looking uncomfortable and afraid, like he was holding a bomb that might detonate. Then he handed her back and left. He hasn't asked again. He sends the child support checks on time. I'll give him that. And he sends cards on her birthday and holidays, generic things clearly picked out by whatever new girlfriend has taken pity on him. I save them all in a box in the attic. Someday, when Emma's old enough, I'll let her decide if she wants a relationship with her father. But that's her choice to make, not mine to force. I'm sitting on my back porch now, watching Emma toddle around the yard in the late afternoon sun, chasing butterflies she has no hope of catching. She's 16 months old, fearless, joyful, utterly herself. She has Daniel's dark hair and my green eyes and a laugh that sounds like music. She'll never know that her father called her a disappointment before she was born, that he celebrated a fantasy son while she was real and growing, that he valued a con artist's lies over his actual family. All she'll know is that she's loved, fiercely, completely, without reservation. And that envelope I handed her father, the one that made him realize he'd traded everything real for an illusion, that was just the beginning of my daughter's story. The moment I stopped being someone things happened to and became someone who made things happen. Jennifer Hayes was right about one thing. I deserved to know the truth. But she was wrong about her motivation. She didn't tell me out of some sense of sisterhood or justice. She told me because she was bored with Daniel, saw he was becoming more trouble than he was worth, and wanted to blow up his life on her way out the door. But she gave me a gift anyway, the truth, and the rage that came with it, and the clarity to see that the man I'd loved no longer existed, if he ever had, and that I deserved better than spending my life with someone who saw me as a failure because my body didn't perform on command. Emma drops her butterfly net and runs toward me, arms outstretched, yelling, "Mama, Mama," at full volume. I scoop her up, breathe in the smell of her, sunscreen and grass stains and apple juice, and feel my heart expand. This is what Daniel threw away. Not me, really, not the marriage, but this moment, this pure, uncomplicated love, this chance to be someone's entire world. His loss, my gain. And somewhere out there, in whatever city she's working in now, I hope Jennifer Hayes finds what she's actually looking for, whatever that is. I hope she stops running cons on men who don't deserve it, not because they're good men, but because it's exhausting, hollow work that leaves everyone damaged. But mostly, I don't think about her at all anymore, or about Daniel, or about the year of my life I spent unraveling their lies and rebuilding my future from the wreckage. I think about this, my daughter's laughter, the garden I planted last spring, the freelance clients I've built up into a steady business, the man I've been having coffee with once a week, a widower with kind eyes who treats Emma like she's precious. I think about the life I've built from the ashes of the one that burned down. And I think about how much stronger I am than I ever knew. The envelope was just paper and ink. The real victory was what I did after I handed it over. I chose myself. I chose my daughter. I chose to stop accepting less than I deserved. And that, in the end, is the only revenge that matters.